Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us here. I know we're getting towards the end of our event here, so people, I think we're standing between you guys and the bar, so we'll try and keep it as exciting as we can as we move through this. So we wanted to talk today about some of the work we've been doing with AWS and how we deal with security monitoring and operationalizing that with the new technologies. Let's hit the next one, yeah. So as we look at the model with AWS and what's happened recently, right? There's been several things that have come to fruition. The acceleration we're all aware of. We had COVID happen, that obviously increased that demand, and we had a lot of things come into the cloud. The problem we've realized, and what we've been working on with them, is while we've moved a lot of the technology, we've not necessarily embraced the new operating models and the way that we need to think about those models. So we've either just said, okay, we're going data center in the cloud, and we've just replicated all the same mistakes we made before. Now we can just do them a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. So it causes a lot of the same issues. And so when we talk about whether you're monitoring or whether you're enabling security posture management, those sort of things, you've now just replicated all these problems into something more significant. You couple that with new technology, lack of skilled resources, and the ability to start to scale your operations with the pace that you're scaling the technology has now become unhinged. And then lastly is, how do you bring all of that together and get the value and cost management that you want out of the cloud? We have a lot of customers that we're working with, and they're like, well, we've gone all cloud and now it's more expensive because we've just replicated everything and it's gotten much worse, and we don't have the people, so we're having to bring in a lot of third-party people to come in and run it. There's a lot of turnover, it becomes very cost inefficient, and we're just starting to get, nobody sits in, I have everything in one cloud, right? Everybody's in the environment of, well, I have a little over here, I still have a little bit of data center left, I have a little more over here, and then I've got these 85 SaaS applications. And so now everybody's charging me every time data goes in any direction, and I've just morphed all this into a much bigger problem. And we see that in security monitoring specifically as you start looking at logs and alerts, and how do you move those things from one place to the other, get the visibility across your entire environment, and at the same time, not cause all the problems we had with data centers before, where you're just having to constantly change and move those things. So today we really wanted to get into that, how we've used some of the new AWS tools and architectures to achieve that, and what we're doing with our clients. And my colleague here, Lalit, is going to run through what we've done, what we're doing, and where we think kind of the next evolution of this is going to go and take us.
Yep. Thanks, Scott. Like the operating model, the security operations operating model for especially for cloud, needs to have essential components from a classic SOC, as well as when you're transforming the technology and processes that meet the business needs of a cloud native world. So what does that mean? So you, from a traditional standpoint, you need to have central risk and policy management. Central risk meaning like you have a risk register across all your environments, not just AWS, but across all your environments. Policy management meaning you have to define policy at your org level. What is allowed, what is not allowed, what does the day-to-day look like. And then you will take that policy and convert it into implementation, which is environment specific. For in case of AWS, you would use AWS config or just your centralized management to restrict what can be done and all. Then the next is integrated environment. Now, when you're choosing tools, they need to be able to speak to each other. You can't just go and pick best of class in each of the categories, because what if they don't talk to each other? What if they're not integrated enough? So that leads to lower security posture, even if you have best in class in tools, because your processes are not optimized. So you need to, not just security, but also IT overall, IT and security, the tooling needs to be able to integrate to each other. And the other traditional concept that you need to have is, your oversight and what kind of metrics. Oversight meaning you need your CISO, your security director, your security operations and security engineering, and what kind of metrics are you gathering? Is it meaningful? Are you able to make decisions? Is your leadership finding value in it? So those are the traditional concepts, and what's new is you have DevSecOps, which means is security being included right in the design phase? Are you enabling your developers? Are you giving them, like, for example, in case of AWS, you can give them access to inspector so that they can run scans and identify vulnerabilities way ahead rather than waiting for it to be released and then see the vulnerabilities. Uh, then the other key thing is being decentralized, especially with the cloud environment. You want to keep your logging uh, within your cloud. I mean, like we know that, I mean, organizations are big. You have a lot of tools. It's traditionally the thought process has been to let's send everything into SIM. Let's analyze everything in the SIM. That when you have like multiple cloud environments, your SaaS environment, your on-prem, it's just putting a lot of pressure on your SIM itself. So if you have the ability, let's localize as much as possible. Meaning localize your logging, which will localize your analysis, investigation, and it will localize your response. And then the last piece, the favorite buzzword, end-to-end automation. It's possible with cloud. Uh, from detection to response, you are able to do it. So, keeping these principles or attributes in mind from an operating model perspective, we designed a uh, let me go. We designed an architecture. It's a simple architecture that works for everyone, irrespective of the size of the organization as well as your footprint, AWS footprint. Now, we have deployed this architecture in a new AWS environment as well as existing. I mean, I'll be honest, it's easier to do it in a new environment versus existing, especially if you don't have a central way of managing your AWS accounts. Um, so, what are the key design elements of this architecture? Uh, if you follow AWS architecture guidelines, you need to have, I mean, to maintain the central administrative way, you will have your root account and then you'll have a security account with delegated administrative privileges as a and under that security account, you'll enable guard duty and inspector. That will enable in any new environments as well as the existing environments. That's your detection piece. Guard duty will take care of looking for threats uh, in your AWS accounts. Inspector will look at the vulnerabilities and the vulnerabilities as well as your network exposure to EC2 systems and ECR systems. And so this is the detection piece. On the response side, you will have, sorry, I forgot, security hub. The other thing about within the detection is security hub, where it acts as for a lack of better word, but like a single pane of glass within the AWS environment. So all the findings from guard duty as well as inspector can be aggregated into security hub. And so that's the detection piece. On the response side, you have Event Bridge. We have developed custom Event Bridge rules and Lambda functions to respond to individual findings that you identify that come from guard duty as well as inspector. And if you have, if you're patching in your environment, you ought to have systems manager. That's how you maintain the inventory as well as patching schedules and all that. And the last piece in the response, I would say, is detective. It's very powerful. Not just it analyzes, but also gives you a visual representation of um, what's happening. I mean, with the threat, what's happening? Like, how is the user behaving? What is the system doing? What are the various connected? So that gives you a very powerful tool to investigate your threats. So that's on a high level. That's the design plan. Now, what's if you look at it, there's nothing new. I mean, if you're here, you've attended other threat detection response sessions. The this is the kind of architecture, most you will even find it on AWS, uh, uh, AWS links. So if there's nothing new, what is the difference? So main thing I would say is we have developed customized processes to uh, when we say automation, yes, there are services in there that you can automate, but it's not easy to automate. So we have developed, operating procedures that go with, some template automations, and overall that will leverage your AWS native services in a most effective way. That's the main important thing here. And when you're using a native services, you you're, you're, you you have performance efficiencies there, as well as you're optimizing your costs because you're not sending any log data outside of this environment. You're keeping everything in-house, and that means it's going to be less expensive, as well as the mean time to detect because guard duty and inspector are. Were you trying to? I'm sorry.
That was happening.
So, yeah, guard duty and inspector both are continuously operating. So, you have the detection timeline is drastically reduced, as well as from a response standpoint. If you have enabled enough automations, you are reducing your response timeline as well. So your mean time to detect and mean time to respond are also drastically reduced. And, uh, and you have the ability to automate and do an end-to-end automation. Going back to our operating model principle, you can, if you want to, get to 100%. I know by default, I mean, you are not able to get to that end-to-end scenario, but we have seen at other clients where we have implemented this, we are able to achieve 50 to 60% at minimum. And as we keep doing it, as there's more confidence in the automations, you can get to closer to 100%. So with this architecture, the first question that I get from our clients that we have shown is, okay, but it's not just AWS. I have a bigger environment. I have existing tooling that I've invested in. What about that? And what we have said is, so the MVP, the AWS architecture is to the left, and on the right you integrate with your existing tooling. Now, our recommendation has been to send, to look at your use cases, your security use cases, and integrate alerts primarily. In certain scenarios, it makes sense to send user data as well into your SIEM or SOAR to be able to correlate further. But primarily, we have seen just integrating alerts is more than enough. You do not need all your CloudTrail events, all your guard duty findings into the SIEM or SOAR, depending on which you are using. Because what are you going to do? How are you going to correlate with all your CloudTrail logs? It's enough. I mean, AWS, the services are getting matured enough to leverage to be independent, like not get all the raw logs into the SIEM. And given this model helps you to reduce your logging footprint. Your SIEM, if you're using a traditional SIEM, They are performance, like the more data you push onto it, the performance goes down drastically. I mean, I remember my days when I was using a product 10 years ago, an on-prem SIM. To run a report, it would take almost a day to run a report on 24 hours worth of the data. You remove that piece altogether. Um, and from an automation standpoint, if you have a SOAR or what we have done at our clients is in this model, the playbooks that you write for analysts, they are, if you're not able to do the complete automation, automate at least pieces that can be. Like, for example, if analyst needs to go search for a specific IP address either in your own intelligence platform or outside open source intelligence, have a quick playbook written out. Like we have a recent example that comes to my mind is Jupyter Notebooks. You can write those individual automations to at least expedite your analysis to some extent. Like I said, 50 to 60% of your playbook can be automated. The rest is all context, business context that you need to look. You need a human person to look to it. So with this model, overall, you're able to optimize your performance. So just summarizing our gains as a result of using the model is you have more visibility in your specific to the AWS environment. If you're using system manager, you know the whole inventory. You know what's happening where because and what kind of threats are coming across. It's because it's a continuous one. Advanced and adaptive. AWS is pushing findings on a quarterly basis. They are pushing new features. Like for Guard Duty, just in this conference, they announced the malware. So it can be enabled as of yesterday. And it takes just few clicks. So you're getting the best from an AWS standpoint. And it's native technology. I mean, who would understand AWS cloud better than AWS themselves? And the third point being rapid detection and containment. You're able to reduce your detection and response, continuous monitoring, and depending on amount of automation you have deployed, you're reducing the response rate as well. And as a result of all this, you're improving your security performance, not just tool performance, but your analyst performance. You're reducing your exposure, and able to detect threats timely. And as a result of all this, the big thing is you are reducing cost. So that's pretty much it. Not sure if anyone has questions.
And if anybody does have questions, sorry, I can bring them the microphone so you can be heard. Hang on one second.
So I heard you said it reduced cost towards the end, right? We hear a lot of questions around what's the ROI on any kind of effort like this? How do you go by that?
I missed the end of that.
What's the ROI
I heard
on
ROI.
ROI?
Yep.
What's the ROI on the effort? You're not really replacing anything, right? How do you?
Well, I think ROI and security ROI is always an interesting question because it's insurance.
It is,
You're
yeah.
selling insurance type of scenario. So you run into that. I think the important thing here is to look at the cost differential between what you were spending and what you are, in addition to what you're additionally getting. So when we talk about the things you can do to reduce costs, some of the things around where we're saying you're starting to distribute logging across multiple environments and just consolidating alerts, that's going to drive down your cost. So in theory, you have a business risk calculation that's driving your return for those investments. It's going to be very different from every company as far as, depending on your regulatory landscape, there are certain things you have to do. So we look at it as you can drive an ROI, but the return is really business driven. Here is really about how do you maximize costs. So what are you going to get? And so these strategies allow you to distribute that and do the primary storage and processing of the data as close to its native location as possible, and that drives down your overall cost. Otherwise, all your data platforms and cloud platforms, when you're in a hybrid environment, you're going to be paying exfil at every point, and then you're also paying consumption at every point. So you then start to double and triple up on your costs.
Any other questions? I'll happily bring you the microphone. Anybody? Going once, going twice. I think you've answered all questions.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, everybody.